So I've been kind of out of the movement for a couple years. Is there anything that I've missed, or what's been going on? Can you fill me in?
Oh, well, there's been so much going on. 2020, there's been an influx of different types of groups who have transformed into different hate groups. Anaheim Police Department, since 2020, has continued its reign on BIPOC folk in Orange County. For example, in 2021, there was an individual by the name of Brandon Lopez, who is the cousin of Jonathan Hernandez, who is a council member, who was killed and murdered by Anaheim PD in front of his house by SWAT tactical force. They shot 150 bullets into this man because he was having a mental health crisis. And Anaheim PD has still not been held accountable for that. And his anniversary of his death was just yesterday, actually. And they had a vigil in front of Anaheim City Hall. So that happened in 2021. And last year in 2022, exactly here in Anaheim at the Anaheim Convention, our organization, OCJ, was called by the LGBTQU plus Center of Orange County to help support and show assistance to trans youth, because there was a huge right-wing organization who was intimidating trans youth, saying that they don't have any rights, telling them that they weren't actual humans. So last year we came out here along with the LGBTQU plus Center of Orange County and some other folks to let people see that trans rights are human rights. Trans youth deserve to have a life and dignity. So that happened last year. We also have been working with national organizations like the Tyree Nickel Foundation. My shoes say Tyree Nickel. And we actually made these shoes for Tyree Nickel. And the shoes that we made for him, they were donated to his family. And we had a huge event called Skate Against Hate, where we had a bunch of skaters wear our shoes. And bands actually donated these shoes to our organization to be able to help support. Yeah, Tyree Nickel is the young black man who was killed by Memphis Police Department in the beginning of this year. And of course, America they broadcasted it like it was a public lynching, like it was 9 o'clock news when Tyree Nichols was killed. And he was killed just for being black, to be honest. I don't know what else to tell you. He was going home. He was stopped at a checkpoint. The police told him to get out. He was questioning the police, and they used extreme force to get him out of the car. He got scared. He ran off home because he was only a block away from home, by the way. He was only a block away when they stopped him. So he ran home. The police chased after him. That's where the fighting ensued, and they really beat him up bad. And they beat him up so bad that in the hospital he died from his wounds. This year we had an event called Skate Against Hate. It was our third annual event, because we hosted it in 2021. And we hosted it this year because we wanted to recognize Tyree Nichols. We wanted to make sure the nation and Orange County knew that this happened. And we also wanted to educate the community, like I was stating earlier today, on the rise of hate crimes and why hate crimes keep occurring, and why California, and specifically Orange County, is the main area for hate crimes in America. So we wanted to educate the community on that. And I think other people who were there, from what I've heard, it was a great event. And we're also going to keep doing that event, because unfortunately hate crimes are not on the decline. they're on the decline? Unfortunately, they're not on the decline. Oh. They're on the increase.
I was going to ask about that. Like, since the Black Lives Matter protests have kind of died down, would you say that police brutality is still on the rise since then? Or
of course.
Did it make a difference?
I think since the BLM protests have ended, and then we as a community realized that BLM was the BLM as an organization was a joke, right? There was still a money from the organization to do other things. I think a lot of individuals within the opposition started to infiltrate different groups, whether it be the police departments, whether it be school boards, whether it be any type of insurrectionist groups, after BLM, it basically empowered these groups to say, okay, I'm gonna run for office because you know, Black lives don't matter, and I'm gonna make sure they don't matter, so I'm gonna run for office. So I think we're dealing with a whole nother quagmire now. It's not just radicals. It's not just what we've seen today. It's the school board officials. It's the mayor's offices that we have to confront now. It's the people that are in corporate. It's the Netflix executives. It's the Paramount executives. It's the people who are paying these individuals to not picket in front of Viacom or Paramount, you know, these big media conglomerates. The people who are on these boards now have the same ideologies. They don't want to uplift BIPOC voices. And if they do, they want to generalize us. They want to make all of us look like criminals, basketball players, football players, or they want to put us in chains, make us look like slaves, and keep making movies about it, and keep making sitcoms about it. We're more than just slaves. We're more than just basketball players. We're more than just football players. We're more than just street vendors, like for our brown community. We're more than just all these things. And until we as a community of BIPOC leaders and youth come together and call it out and educate and then demonstrate and then legislate and get people that look like us, that talk like us, that want to do things like us in office and out of these school board meetings and out of these boardrooms, we're going to continue to see what we've seen in 2020. It's going to continue to happen no matter who's the president, by the way. I want to emphasize that. No matter who's the president, we're going to continue to see what's happening. In the last election, I will admit I did vote for Biden because fuck
Trump.
Of course, you know? But it's just like, I mean, the last 4 years, to be honest, like they say that this has been the most progressive administration that has ever happened in America. That's what the pundits say, not people OTG, not people on the ground. I mean, what has changed? Like you said, Anaheim PD is still killing people. LAPD just got a 50% surplus in their budget under a Democratic mayor, Karen Bass, the first black woman in LA. And then what? Kamala Harris, first black woman to be vice president. What have they done for HBCUs? Our HBCUs still don't have broadband internet. Most of our historically black colleges are in food deserts, meaning that they have to go out of their college in order to get proper food, in order to get access to food. We don't want to see Carl's Jr.'s and Jack in the Boxes everywhere when I go to college. What about the Whole Foods? What about a Sprouts, right? And this is under the Democratic administration. You know what I mean? So earlier when I was having these Republican and radicals talk to me, I even told them, I said, brother, I'm out for Biden as well. I said, what have they done for me? Nothing, right? And they got quiet. As you said, they got quiet. They were like, oh, they shook my hand. Oh. So it's just like, until we as a nation of educated youth, right? I want to emphasize that because you're educated. You're very smart. I'm smart. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I know people who are younger than me are smarter than me, so smart. Until this next generation, Gen Z, come up and say, listen, we need to create a new party. We need to get more people in there who are going to do things that we want to see. We're going to continue to see left and right, and then we're going to continue to see what we've seen today, all these radicals thinking that they own the shit, they own the streets, and their way is the right way, when it's not. It's the next generation. And unfortunately, not to be too harsh, that generation is dying out. And what we're going to see is the new generation step up and empower themselves and run for office and really change America to what it should be, which is black and brown, because we shut shit down.
So tell me a little bit about your nonprofit, OCJ. When was that formed, and who's involved, and what kind of events do you guys show up at?
Sure. So, OC Justice Initiative was started in 2020. It was started in the midst of so much racial upheaval.
The Black Lives Matter movement? Black
Lives Matter movement, one of the biggest civil rights movement we've seen since 1960s, under the assassination and the death of George Floyd. When I first came to Orange County, I specifically came out here for schooling, and it was go to Chapman. When Trump got elected, I hosted a protest on my campus. That was in 2016 he got elected, and I hosted a protest on my campus, and I told each and every person that I was not going to stop until we seen changes in Orange County, until we see a diverse groups of individuals like myself really feel comfortable. That's right, really feel confident to go out and use their voice. Fast forward 20 years later, we see, George Floyd get murdered, and we were in a pandemic. And every protest that I went to was led by somebody that wasn't of color. Every protest in Orange County I went to in 2020. And I said that this is a problem. Like, where are the people of color, black and brown, yellow? Where are these BIPOC folks in Orange County putting in the work, empowering themselves?
Yeah.
And it was very challenging for me at first to want to put myself out there, because I'm not a type of guy who wants all the attention. But at the same time, I knew that in order for things to change and for people to see that there were black and brown youth who wanted to empower themselves, I needed to get out there and make some change. So in 2020, I started the OC Justice Initiative, and it's a nonprofit group, BIPOC nonprofit group, with the goal of educating our BIPOC youth on their ancestry, their rights, their human rights, their constitutional rights, by giving them access to NAACP organizations, national organizations with civil rights like the ACLU, and then also empowering BIPOC youth to demonstrate, whether it be giving speakers to different organizations, giving megaphones to different organizations, making sure people are safe when they go demonstrate. Our organizations, we provide that. And then lastly, the goal was to make sure the youth that we have come into our organization and demonstrate and volunteer with us. Make sure those youth know that if they want to see really change, if they want to see positive progress, they run for office, legislate, educate, demonstrate, legislate. And that's our goals at the OCJ, is to make sure we empower the next generation to educate themselves on the injustice. And once they educate themselves, they demonstrate, whether it be hosting a protest, going to a city council meeting, calling out the injustice they see. Or if that doesn't work, legislate, running for office, voting for people who you want to see. Because we feel as though that's the true essence of progress. If you fulfill all those pillars, we'll see really a real great progress. We started in 2020. We hosted over 95 protests in Orange County. We're looking to host a protest next month at the Orange Unified School District, because right now Orange Unified, they basically banned, or not banned, but they just passed a law where if a youth tells a teacher or educator that they prefer this pronoun, that educator has to report that to their parent. And I think that's dumb. I think that's bogus. I think with this environment we're in, and with our youth expressing themselves more so than any other time in the last generation, I think they should fully express themselves without any type of hesitancy from any type of group. So we're going to host a demonstration next month at the Orange Unified to let them know that that's inhumane, that stands against human rights. I think every human should want to express themselves how they want to. So that's going to be our next demonstration. And then we're also going to be doing a Thanksgiving drive in November, where we're going to be collaborating with Mary's Kitchen. Mary's Kitchen is a staple in Orange County. They've been around for 40 years. And they're a homeless and houseless shelter organization, where the homeless and houseless community, they go to Mary's Kitchen to get food, they get sanitary products, and every Thanksgiving they host free turkeys for them. So we're going to be collaborating with them this year, and we're going to be giving out free haircuts to the houseless community.
Okay.
Free shoes. I know last year I did that just personally by myself on my own. But this year, I definitely want to use OCJ and use the backing we have to really do it for the wider community and shut down a whole block and have like a block party and do it for people. So
Cool.
that's going to be fun. And then that's going to be probably like one of the last events we do for this year. And then and you know, in February we're going to do some Black History Month celebrations, and we're going to be going to different campuses. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be big.
How come there aren't really any more Black Lives Matter protests? Why have they died down?
It's a good question. As I look back at, you know, 2020 and you know, what myself and a couple of comrades were doing, I think that a lot of people started to realize that it's going to take more work than just protests. I'm talking from a privileged position because I've been doing this for almost 8 years. And when I say this, I mean community organizing. So, but I know some of the colleagues that I met, that was their first year ever going out to a protest. That was their first year ever organizing. That was their first year ever getting arrested. That was their first year ever hearing death threats, right?
Yeah.
So for some people, it was a big shock, and they didn't want to experience that, right? They didn't want to be watched like we were watched. They didn't want to always be looking over their back. But as Malcolm X says, a man that does not stand for something will fall for anything. And if you can't stand for something, if you can't stand for human rights, if you can't stand for 1 week, you know, not going to school, or for 1 day calling off work, I get it. It's hard. I get it. But if you can't stand for just 1 day or 1 week, then imagine how long it took Malcolm X and MLK to really get things started for civil rights. It took them years. The Montgomery boycott, the Montgomery bus boycott, where Rosa Parks sat down, where a white man was supposed to be sitting down, that took 365 days. That took 365 days for black people to be able to sit on the bus again. So imagine how long it's going to take our generation to really see the progress that we want to see for black, for brown, for trans, for LGBTQ folks. It's going to take longer. Because if it took them in the 1960s 365 days just for black people to just sit on a bus, it's going to take us longer. And I think a lot of our generation as well, secondly, we get very, if we don't see instant progress, we get apathetic about it. We're like, oh, yeah, no progress, okay, well, I'm gonna go back to work. Oh, yeah. No progress, okay, well, I got shit, I'm gonna go back to school. And in the 1960s, it was different. We had unions, we had groups like like the organization I'm starting. We had organizations that had money, that had funding, that said, hey, if you go to jail, I'm gonna bail you out. You want to picket on the line, or you want to protest for a week and you're worried about not having a check? Here, I'll pay you. We had organizations like that in the 1960s who did that. And unfortunately, what we're seeing now is most of these organizations who are for human rights, who are for civil rights, not really giving opportunities to BIPOC youth to be able to not go to work for a day, to be able to say, hey, I want to really put in the work to see progress. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunately sad, because for our organization, that's our goal, is to be the first ever policy think tank in Orange County where we can give those youth who want to empower themselves the chance to do it without capitalism, without trying to go back to work, without trying to go back to school. Like, we can give you that. And that's what America is. It's built on capitalism. It's built on white supremacy. It's built on killing our voices and distracting us, so we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know how to empower ourselves, because we got to make the money, we got to pay the rent, we got to pay our phone bill, we got to get gas in the car, and we got to do all this, we got to eat. And then by the time we're distracted, there's the next election. And then we're like, oh, wait, but I thought we did that. Well, no, we didn't actually, because we got distracted again because of capitalism and white supremacy, and that's what they want us to do. They want us to be individual. They don't want us to come together. And I think that's what we've seen in 2020. After a while, is that individuals started to embrace their individuality, their ego, and what they contribute to the movement, not what we all contribute to the movement. And unfortunately, that was to our demise.
Okay, I just have 2 questions left. Do you feel like anti-Semitism is on the rise, and where does that stem from?
Of course. I think anti-Semitism stems from many factors. I think it stems from, music, right? I think what's in our music nowadays doesn't really promote any type of togetherness, or I would say it doesn't have a global approach anymore in our music. It's more so like individualized to that specific culture, which then I would say breeds neglect for other cultures, and then that neglect turns into hate, because when people don't know about other cultures or other religions or other races, then they say, oh, well, don't know, don't care.
Yeah.
And then that breeds hate. So I think media, which is encompassing music, I think media as a conglomerate is a huge issue on why anti-Semitism is on the rise. And then secondly, it's definitely extremist groups who have been emboldened by Donald Trump, who have been emboldened by, unfortunately, music like Kanye West and all these people.
Yeah.
And 4chan and these backboard, dark web industries, and that are not regulated. For example, before Elon Musk bought Twitter, Twitter was not a place for hate. It was low. I think it was about 15% of hate incidents that happened on Twitter, and that was not under Elon. Now when Elon bought it, in the last year or so, there has been a 50% increase of hate incidents, and suspectively hate crimes, people threatening people's lives on Twitter just because they're Jewish, or just because they're black, or just because they're Mexican. And that is a part of the media conglomerate. Elon Musk has a lot of power, and he has a lot of capital behind him, and he's friends with Kanye. He's friends with these people. And if we continue to give these individuals platforms, or we continue to laugh or record these things and not really demonstrate, not really take it on and say this is bad, it's going to continue to happen. And for example, I don't know if you've seen the Alabama, what happened in Alabama recently. It was a big fight
shooting?
on the waterfront.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, and it was a bunch of white individuals docking their boat, and they wouldn't listen to the black individual to say stop docking.
Yeah, and some guy swam across the way to Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned that part, because that's exactly what I was about to say. Until the next generation and our generation starts to demonstrate, like that young boy did, he didn't record, right, and just sit there and say, "Oh my God." He actually did something. He swam.
Yeah.
He swam. He could have just stayed. He was 16 years old, by the way. He could have just stayed there and say, "Oh, man." No, he got off. He swam, and he said, "What can I do to help?" Until more people in our generation says, "What can I do to help?" Instead of posting a black square, instead of hashtagging this, instead of sharing that, instead of signing petitions. Okay, what can I do with my body to really get into this fight and say, stop with the anti-Semitism, stop with the anti-trans bills, stop with the anti-black bills, stop with the anti-immigrant legislation, stop calling our human beings that come into this country aliens, stop calling these individuals who want to express themselves freely non-human, or these other slurs that they say about our trans individuals in our community. Until people start to demonstrate that and really use all their body to say no, unfortunately, we're going to continue to see anti-Semitism on the rise. We're going to continue to see hate crimes on the rise. But it's going to take all of us to really say, no, enough is enough. I'm not going to work. I'm taking one day, just one day out of the week to say, I'm going to be here on the front lines and I'm going to show the community that I'm here.
Yeah.
Like we've seen today. We had a few young individuals there. That
was my next question, just to summarize what event we were at today and what did we see today, what went on.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much that we seen today that was disappointing, but it was also things that I seen today that was encouraging. I start with the encouraging thing. I mean, we've seen so many individuals who had some hate in their heart. After a while, start to look at me and start to look at the colleagues we were with and say, we think the same, and I'm pretty sure you've seen that too in 2020 when you were on the ground and, we had our comrades, Justin or some other comrades, actually have conversations with these people and they start to say, oh, I agree with you. I agree with more than I thought. And it just takes conversation and really showing them that I'm not here to hate. I'm here to educate. And that's all I kept saying today. I'm not here to hate. I'm here to educate. So that was really, I'm not surprised, but that was really gratifying to see. What was really bad to see was not a lot of our colleagues there in 2020. Again, like I was stating earlier, I know people have work now. I know people think they, there's other more important things, but when you have a situation where you have the person who started so much hate in 2020, who started these racist vitriol, who called these immigrants aliens, who started everything coming to Orange County, then you would expect as a social justice advocate, your comrades will have your back. You would expect the same people who were there in 2020 to be here today. And they weren't. And I mean, at least a lunch break. At least come on your lunch break. Nobody was here, and that was very disappointing. What was another disappointing thing was to see that the Democrat Party didn't really stand their ground. I thought they were going to stand their ground. We were supposed to be there until 1, right? We left. We ended around 11. I was surprised about that. But again, it was due to we didn't have the numbers. I get that. But I was very disappointed because, as you've seen, I was there by myself being hurled by all those radicals. And I wasn't afraid. And I wish more Democrats on the left end weren't that afraid. Will be willing to stand their ground. But they weren't. But I'm glad our organization was there to show them what it looks like when you stand your ground, and when you educate, right, and when you demonstrate, you can get some people who may not think like you to look at you different. And I'm glad I was able to show them that. So I think overall, there were a lot of radicals, like you and I agree. There were a lot of Proud Boys there. There were a lot of insurrectionists there, right?
Did you recognize any of them?
I'm not really good at faces when it comes to the 2020 crowd. I bet they know me. I bet they didn't want to say that, but I did recognize who were Proud Boys. You could just see. I did recognize who were the Proud Boys. I did recognize who were the 5%ers, just by how they dress, and but I was very careful about what I said around them. Because they
get aggressive easily.
Of course they get aggressive and just surveillance. You never want to tell them where you live or what's going on. So I was very cautious about my comrades and saying things around them. But at the end of the day, as you've seen, and I'm assuming as you caught on camera, I think us standing our ground and educating them with statistics about hate crimes and what hate does to the body, what hate does to the mind, really made them look kind of weird. It made them look like they were manic. It made them look manic, and that was my goal, was to make them look manic, because they are manic. They do need help if they can't see that we're standing for human rights, and what the Orange Man is doing is not for human rights. It's to separate us. It's not to put us together. And that was the message I left with, is about unity. And there were a lot of radicals who came up to me after and spoke to me. And, you know, I'm a type of guy, I'm willing to talk to them. I know a lot of my colleagues, my Democratic colleagues, were like, don't talk to them, don't talk to them. But I was like, you know, if they want to talk to me, have a civil conversation, I'll let them know, you know. And there were a lot of them who were yelling at me in my ear, and I was smiling at them, which made them even more mad. But at the end of the day, I think I'm glad that we held our ground, and we showed them that there is a group of individuals in Orange County that will stand for human rights.
Yeah.
You know?